Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here with you today. My name is Rosie McCool. I'm the Deputy Director with Chief Probation Officers of California, and excited to present the next in our informational workshop series that we offer from time to time on Friday afternoons. Today we have a great presentation from Marvin Figaro from Kelly Services, and so we'll talk about that in a little bit, but want to start off with just a few housekeeping items. Just a reminder, if you can keep yourselves on mute when you're not speaking. As well, this is going to be more informal, and happy to take questions during the presentation. So appreciate, Marvin, you being willing to do that. So if you have a question while he's speaking, feel free to drop that in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature. There certainly will be time at the conclusion of the presentation, but also, Marvin is very willing to take questions as they go, so that we don't forget some of the questions that we have. So feel free to do that, and we can act as facilitators, or you can certainly unmute and ask on your own. And then always a very popular question, the presentation, the PowerPoint will be sent out to everyone post the informational workshop, so you will receive that. I think that covers all of my housekeeping items. I would just say I'm excited when Marvin reached out to CPOC some time ago to talk about Kelly's initiative that they've started in a few different states, and their interest in partnering with probation departments to help our work to find employment, help make connections for vocational goals for individuals that we are working with on probation. And so wanting to explore how Kelly can embark on that in California and work with probation departments. So definitely in the early stages, but wanted to set up this workshop to provide the information and really talk through next steps, and really allow Marvin to introduce himself, because he would be the point of contact going forward if you have interest and want to explore more with Kelly. So with that, I will say Marvin is the Director of DEI Strategic Partnerships for Kelly Services, which is a national organization, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And I will turn it over to him to share more about the Equity at Work program. So Marvin, I will kick it over to you.
Thank you, Rosie. Good afternoon. I believe it is now afternoon in California, to everyone. First of all, I truly appreciate the time, Rosie and Amy, to speak to this group and just share a little bit about the work that Kelly has embarked on in the last 4 years under our Equity at Work initiative, particularly to share some highlights of the Kelly33 program, which is our Fair Chance, Second Chance hiring program. So as Rosie mentioned, my name is Marvin Figaro. My pronouns are he, him. And today I am wearing a red and white checked shirt. So just a little bit about me. I've been with Kelly over 20 years, held a number of different roles, but truly where my heart is and where I spent most of my career within the organization and even prior to is in the talent space. So either in recruiting or talent acquisition or leading talent teams and sourcing teams. And for the last 4 years, I've been involved in our diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, initially in the HR function, focusing primarily on internal inclusion and belonging, and culture work, training, and setting up workshops and that sort of thing through our affinity groups. But for the last 3 years, I've been actively involved making a pivot into the Equity at Work space. So what I'm going to do as we go through the conversation today, and I really, really hope it's going to be a conversation. So as Rosie mentioned, I'm very informal where these things are concerned. Feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, ask a question, pop one in the chat. I'm not going to be able to see the activity as in presenter mode, but very, very open to making it conversational today. So just to set kind of the foundation for what Kelly33 is. Equity at Work was an initiative that our CEO, Peter Quigley, and now our Chief Diversity Officer, Keelan Ratliff, kind of came up with a number of years ago, over 5 years ago, even prior to 2020. And it was really about looking at barriers to employment, right? We kind of took a look at our own house, if you will, looking at Kelly's processes when we think about, how we engage with talent, how we get talent in the door, whether it's through that initial sourcing engagement or they apply for a role. And throughout that entire talent life cycle, even post offer and hire, we had to take a look at our own house first before we even went out to say, is this something viable that we can take to our clients? And quite honestly, the approach that we took was really to look at a number of different barriers, right? So for instance, one of the things we looked at right out the gate was 4-year degrees. There was a number of job descriptions that we had, more than 90% that for whatever reason, when they were initially written, a lot of them required a degree. And we really had to ask the question, does this job require a degree? Can you be successful in this role? What are the skills, capabilities, competencies, right? The equivalent types of experience you can have minus a 4-year degree that could make you successful in this role. And when we took that deep assessment, we realized that over 80% of those jobs, so almost 80% of the jobs at Kelly, does not require you to have a 4-year degree. And we removed it. Another thing we looked at was background screens and processes within our onboarding that could create these artificial barriers. So quite honestly, after kind of going through that exercise ourselves and really, proving that it was viable, through his own experience, our Chief Diversity Officer and Peter as well, our CEO, they kind of looked at this and said, how can we take this and export this new learning, this understanding, this new knowledge to our clients? Number one, not just to make it good for business, meaning that you're going to create these new talent pools and get to filling roles much more quickly and getting people up and running and producing and that sort of thing. But quite honestly, what is the overall impact that it could have on society? What is the overall impact it could have on talent populations that are typically blocked out of opportunities for employment because of these barriers that, again, at some point it was maybe applicable. At some point, somebody thought it was the right thing to do from a risk or HR perspective, but quite honestly, not necessarily applicable in today's talent environment. So equity at work was the initial kind of thought, right? In order to operationalize something like that, because it's great to have great ideas, but how do you actually, put rigor around it, put structure and process around it to make it work, right? Where you can kind of measure some of the outcomes. We started to drill down even more and put some things in place, particularly around Kelly33. I think that's the one that we've had, I'd say, a much higher level of success with. And that's the one, obviously, why we're here today and what we're here to talk about. So again, kind of looking out in the marketplace at what the talent landscape was, and through a number of different research and data points that we were able to uncover through some external partners, we realized there was 33% of the working population that had some type of justice involvement, right? At that point, it was 70 million people. There's recent data that I saw that suggests that number is even more now. So as a result, the Kelly33 brand, if you will, was created. But more importantly, it really led us down the path of saying, okay, we looked at our own, kind of background adjudication and what does that look like throughout that talent experience. But more importantly, how do we translate that into our client's environment, right? Because it's one thing for you to do it for us to do it. It's a whole nother thing to take that and take it to a client and, and have them, look and evaluate their own risk and compliance and look at and evaluate their own, let's call it culture, right? Because there is culture and stigma and biases that surround justice involved folks. How do we take that and export that to them and get them to understand the benefits? So we have to come up with a plan. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time here, but not too much because it's important, I think, for this audience to understand. For us, this is more than just branding. It's more than just, what's put out there in the marketplace. It is really our attempt to make an impact and create equitable access for employment to folks that are justice involved. So the first thing we have to look at is, does it make sense for that particular client, right? Given the type of industry that they're in. For some of our clients, they have a lot of federal contracts and there's some pretty rigorous stipulations around screening and that sort of thing, along with drug screening, but background screening as well. So does it make sense, right? Is there an opportunity to not just implement? Because one of the things that we think very, very carefully about is, can we be successful, right? More so than just wanting to implement. So we take a very close look at that to see if this makes sense and what are the outcomes, right? And not just for the client, but also for the talent that we're trying to engage with. Because one thing that I am very adamant about, and it's part of my conversations with clients, is I don't believe in just plugging justice involved folks into a job just because the idea, the notion, right, is that, oh, well, they need a job, so we'll just give them a job. To me, it's a lot bigger than that. It's a lot more important to set someone on a path that they can see a level of success. We shouldn't be determining that for them, right? If we can put them on a path where they can see the potential for success, then that's where I feel like we're really making an impact and we're doing the right thing. So we do that evaluation, then we look at kind of the market demographics, right? So what is the competitive landscape? What is, the client's talent challenge, if you will, right? And can this Kelly33 program serve as a solution for that challenge, right? One of the things we tend to look at is, when we have the available data, and I would love to at some point down the road from this group kind of understand what the talent landscape is in terms of numbers, right? So if we took and geography, I'm just going to throw out Northern California, right, as a market, right? What does the number of justice involved individuals that are coming through the probation system look like, right? So we can kind of say, okay, we have, potentially a pool of talent that we can apply to not just one client, but across, the entire Northern California region. The second thing we want to look at when we're doing this from a talent perspective is understanding not just the talent landscape, but understanding what's going to happen with that talent within those client spaces, right? Another thing I'm very, very adamant about, and I'd say a large percentage of the roles fall into this category, not all of them, but a large percentage of the roles that we try to connect justice involved folks with are what we call contingent labor. So it's temp to perm for all intents and purposes. Temp being very, finite, it's defined, right? There's a start and an end date. We do our best to continuously try and identify opportunities for folks in that temp space, meaning if they come off for assignment, or we know they're going to come off assignment in 3 weeks, we start looking for their new assignment within that time period, hopefully making them, enabling them to transition into the new assignment without any gaps. So that's a very small percentage of the type of work that we do with Kelly33. Again, the large percentage of it is contingent, meaning that client has the intent for that individual to go full-time or go direct at some point later on down the road. It's usually, we have some clients that are very aggressive. They use Kelly as their recruiting arm very deliberately, meaning they will they have a 90-day transition period, right? So within 3 months, they know they're going to convert that talent into full-time employees. But typically it's around 6 months to a year is kind of the the range where we see clients are looking to convert. So it's not just, again, type of work, but it's kind of what does the work lead to. We also spend a lot of time with our clients, partnering with them, helping them understand a number of different things. So one thing that is the biggest hurdle right now, and many on this call may be familiar with that, in addition to kind of the bias and stigma and quite honestly, misinformation that exists around justice involved folks, is the legal and compliance, right? The risk and compliance. So we spend a lot of time partnering with clients, meeting them where they are, right? For some clients, again, it might be, some federal restraints why they can't modify their background screening process. But for others, they're just risk averse and they're not willing to explore it in the immediate. Sometimes we find that when we can demonstrate success, there's a little bit more appetite to adjust their background screening process. But we meet them where they are. We partner with their legal and risk and compliance teams, with our legal risk and compliance experts. In some cases, depending on where the pilot is going to be run, if it's kind of a large manufacturing environment, we want to be sure that the operators, right? So whoever the line leads or operation leads are, they are aware and they understand how to engage and interact and some of the, let's call it requirements, right? Expectations that may come with having individuals that are justice involved at the site. So we really do want to spend a lot of time there and do that upfront prep work to make that environment, right? Make that job experience as not easy, but as less challenging as possible. And then the rest of it is just really kind of, making sure that from an adjudication standpoint, we understand what their thresholds are. For a lot of clients, it's nonviolent felonies is kind of where they draw the line. Some of it is circumstance depending on how much information we have. So for example, there's really two populations. One is the individual that's fully re-entered the workforce and has really no more legal requirements, right, as far as incarceration is concerned. So, but because they've been justice involved, they'll go through the entire recruiting and selection process. And once an offer is extended, which is where we start the background screening process, if it's within the last 7 years, it's going to get flagged. What we do at that point is ensure that whatever the client's requirements are, we mirror that, right? And we ensure that at the time they're going to be converted, there are no hurdles, no barriers. There's nothing that's going to prevent them from getting in the door with that client on a full-time basis. We encourage and we really advise and consult with our clients to look at these things on a case-by-case basis, right? So there's no blanket rejections, right? Number one, it shouldn't be asked on the application or any part of the interview and selection process. And that should not happen until post-offer. So we've established that this person is qualified, they can do the job, they've been selected for the job. And then at that point, when the background screen is run, we start looking at it on a case-by-case basis, meaning, is it job related, right? What are the circumstances where we have information available? The other population that I've been working with and partnering with is individuals in this audience, right? It's other states where it's through their workforce or work readiness programs or workforce coordinators. Different states call it different things, or in some cases it is with probation offices. But again, trying to get clients to understand that that individual that's coming on site, they just want to come and work, right? However, there may be some requirements that they have where they have to take 15, 20 minutes and potentially check in with a probation officer, right? Making sure that all of those things are clear going in. And it helps when we're able to work directly with either Department of Corrections or probations, because we get information that would not otherwise be available to us on a simple background screen. And then that really helps us with that case-by-case adjudication. And it really helps us to prep appropriately so that when we know when we put that individual on site, we're setting them up for success. So I think this is a great spot for me to just take a beat, take a pause, see if there are any questions. Rosie, Amy, anyone want to come off mute, raise their hand.
Yeah, no, great. I was actually going to suggest that. So if anyone does have a question, feel free to use the raise your hand function or drop that in the chat. I think I can kick it off. Marvin, one of the questions that came to mind as you were speaking is just around the businesses that Kelly partners with. So is this initiative, and maybe it's both of these, but are there existing clients that Kelly has where they've expressed interest in working and supporting the justice involved population, those on probation, securing employment? Or is it when a county probation department reaches out to you and says, I'm interested in learning more on how to kind of pilot this, and then you kind of put out feelers to businesses in that organization explaining what Kelly's doing and if they'd be interested?
Great question. And it's both, right? We do have right now 58 at last count clients that have an equity at work program in place. Quite a few of them within that 58, I'd say probably around 36 have a Kelly33 program in some form or fashion, meaning we've piloted or we're piloting, or they've removed some aspect of the criminal background screen from their process, right? So yes, we do have clients that are currently Kelly33 or equity at work clients. They may not necessarily be in California just yet, but the good thing is if they exist elsewhere, we take all of that good data, and I'll share a little bit about how we collect that in a bit, but we take all of that good data and we build kind of mini case studies and sometimes larger case studies from other clients and demonstrate to them, hey, look, California operations, we're having great success in Michigan, right? And here's how the program is set up, and we have their peers, whether it's HR, the operators, reach out to the California folks. I'm just using California as an example, to really be advocates for the program, right? So that's the yes to the existing clients. The yes to what the second part of what you asked is, yes, if there are individuals on the call, officers and chiefs on the call that want to just reach out and kind of establish that partnership. What part of what I'm doing with this call and others is building that network, right? So as we start to scale, meaning as I take existing programs from one state and try and implement in California, or as I use this as the opportunity to prospect, right? So we have clients that are already Kelly clients. So just for context, any client that I'm talking about right now is currently a Kelly client. So it's not new sales. We're not trying to use this as an opportunity to go out and sell and gain new business. No, this is clients that already exist within the Kelly portfolio. What we're trying to do is present this to them as an opportunity to increase their talent pool, to get people to work more quickly, with the added benefit of really helping the community and helping justice involved folks. So yes, we do use this. If someone would call and say, hey, Marvin, I'm tell me more about how this could work, in my geography, in my area, what I can do and what I plan to do, and I'll share a little bit about that later on, is I can pull kind of the open orders that we have existing within that market or that region, right? And look at where the opportunities for alignment might be, throw out a couple of descriptions and the individual can come back and say, hey, you know what? Within my talent pool or my constituents, I think I can produce X amount of talent that would meet these requirements. So there's really, we can do it in both ways.
And that leads to the next question that I wanted to ask. If there is a probation department that's interested, I have no idea if there's a Kelly services in every county. And so, as you can imagine, which I'm sure is similar to other states, but we have a lot of diversity within California, some very dense populations in some counties, and then others are either more spread out or more rural. And so to participate, do you have to have a Kelly agency within your jurisdiction? Or if you don't, how would one go about doing that? Or to have to kind of wait until there is a Kelly that opens up in there?
No, and we don't have brick and mortar offices in every jurisdiction. That model, there was one time we probably did, but that model, COVID and post-COVID, forced us to kind of change a little bit, right? So you do not necessarily need a Kelly branch or a brick and mortar facility in your jurisdiction to participate in the program. You can, for now, I can serve as the point of contact, and I will serve as the point of contact if there's interest in a program. What we'll do is kind of look at the area, look at the client base, because it's really just about that, right? Like that one-to-one, if you will, connection between opportunity with the client and talent, right? That everyone on this call is what we're talking about right now. So I will kind of facilitate and coordinate all of that. It can happen in a number of different ways, but the easiest way to explain it is where we don't have brick and mortar presence, we have a centralized recruiting model, right? So there's a team of recruiters and operations leads that will have responsibility for a market or geography or region. And any type of recruiting activity then comes through that centralized model, right? So from an internal Kelly perspective, I'll make sure that all of those folks, the right folks, are connected, and so that we can execute on getting that one-to-one connection between the client opportunity and talent. Now, as we move further down the road, and I think there's some maturity in the program, and we're seeing some level of success, and we kind of have our legs underneath us. I can certainly hand off responsibilities to whoever that operations lead is locally, and then at that point, they can manage the relationship with that probation officer or that chief within that jurisdiction.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't see any additional questions or any questions in the chat, so I think we can continue through with the presentation. But if folks do have questions, please do feel free to put those in the chat, or certainly take advantage of the raise your hand function.
Right. So this number 5 is the critical one, right? Not that the others aren't important, but what we've been doing over the last 4 years since we kind of formalized and put some process and some structure around these programs is we've started to collect data, and what we're able to demonstrate, and from a client perspective, there's some metrics that clients care about, right? Particularly things like time to fill, right? How long did it take us to actually fill an open order? So if it was open today, from that clock being started, how many days was that order open until we filled it? Things like time to start, we don't necessarily track that, but turnover is an important one for them, right? Because turnover costs them money, right? Churn costs them money. And in the space where Kelly33 kind of lives right now, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we're looking to expand beyond that, but right now this is primarily in our professional and industrial business unit, right? So that's if you think of manufacturing and fabrication and assembly and logistics and line work, right? What I've often said is let's take the path of least resistance, right? Because we know that clients in that manufacturing space have high churn, high turnover, or they're in sometimes a highly competitive market where they're not the only show in town, right? They're competing with other large manufacturers for the same shrinking pool of talent. So what we've been able to demonstrate with the data we've collected around Kelly33 and the other programs is that when we look at one client and we take it in kind of two slices, we look at the client. So if it's client X, we look at what was the KPIs pre-implementation of a program, and then what is the KPIs post-implementation, and we make those comparisons, right? Again, things like on-time fill, turnover, duration on assignment, and that sort of thing. We also take a more holistic approach, right? So we look at the entire manufacturing space, right? And all the clients that might have a Kelly33 program, and then we compare them to same clients or similar clients in Kelly's portfolio that have not implemented. So, hey, these 58 clients have a Kelly, or 36 clients have a Kelly33 program. Here are their metrics compared to those that don't have a Kelly33 program. And what we found has been very, very encouraging is in all the measures that matter to clients. In most instances, I'm not going to lie to you, we've had some anomalies where things went sideways, but in most instances, where we have programs implemented, they tend to trend better. They tend to trend more positively than those that don't have programs implemented. And we were able to take a number of large clients that we had over the last 4 years and create some case studies. And I'll share just two with you later on. And we really take that information, right, and help clients to inform their decision makers, right? Because, again, you have people in risk and compliance. You may have some people, not often, but sometimes in procurement, right? But particularly HR folks that want to understand, well, why should we do this, right? It sounds good, but why should we do this? Well, when you bring data to them, that's hard to dispute, and you make the business case, it tends to get people's attention, if I can string those words together, and just opens up the door to conversation. And that's what we really want to do, right? At least get the conversation started. All right, so I mentioned the case study just really quickly. A lot of words on this slide here. You'll have the deck post call, and you can read at your leisure. But the net from this is really, we took one of our large retail clients who were struggling to fill roles. Again, number of different factors contributed to them being able to number one, retain their talent. Attraction, again, they were in a highly competitive market. Their rates were average, right? They weren't terrible, but they weren't great. And when you're in a competitive space like that, your pay rates play a huge factor in whether or not you can, number one, get talent in the door, and number two, keep them, because there's a running joke in staffing in that in the professional industrial manufacturing space, people will leave you for 50 cents an hour, right? So we were able to implement the Kelly33 program with them. And the thing I want you to focus on is this result, right? So 200 workers placed within 6 months, right? We were able to get them staffed to the level that they needed to be to sustain their production and get product out the door. The other thing I want you to kind of focus on when you're reading, if you remember it, is more importantly than just getting 200 workers in the door within 6 months, it's how many of them stayed. So more than half, or nearly half, I should say, stayed on assignment after 6 months. So remember earlier I talked about that period of either 90 days or 6 months to a year. So we had almost half of that 200 stay on assignment well past 9 months, some of them over a year, right? And 4% of that number actually went on to be full-time employees with that client. This is another one really quickly. This is the one, like I said, when we start talking turnover numbers, and kind of time to fill, and there's some other time to fill numbers where we can demonstrate when you look at Kelly 33 versus non-Kelly 33 time to fill, kind of across the client portfolio gets reduced by sometimes 5, 6, 7 days. And in staffing, 7 days is a lot, right? Getting someone in seat, getting them, onboarded and up and running and being able to produce, and taking 7 days off of that process is huge for a client. So, we have some great data points that's proof that the programs work, right? Number one, we know that they work, but number two, that it makes good business sense, right? It makes sense to explore justice involved folks as a viable talent population. So I don't think much of this will be unfamiliar to this audience, but quite honestly, again, some research that we were able to do and gather some information about, and more now, I'm certainly seeing it out there in the marketplace, as I go to these different conferences and speaking engagements, or just in general. Within the talent landscape, right? Within the talent space, I'm seeing more and more people talk. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? I'm seeing more people talk about fair chance and second chance and the importance and, why it's good and all of those great things, which is very encouraging, right? We want to raise awareness. We want to be out top of mind, for employers and employers, including ourselves and our client base. But we already know that there is an appetite from the public that suggests they believe in the equity of fair chance and second chance employment, right? The idea that someone should have the opportunity and deserves the opportunity after they've quote unquote served their debt to society to have gainful employment and get on a path to sustainable employment and a career. So this is one of the things that we share as well. But again, I know everyone on this call is probably familiar with that. So I talked about this a little bit earlier on. What's next? Right now, last count, we had over 300 open orders across the state of California. Not all of them are going to, result in equity at work or Kelly 33, but I am committed to taking a look at what makes the most sense. Where can we find these opportunities to make connections? And at least, say to this group, Rosie and Amy as well, even if I were to pull, I don't know, I'm going to throw a number out, 50, 100, right? Can we make some connections? Can we connect talent to these opportunities? So that's one thing, part of what I'm doing right now, where I'm running a pilot with one client out in Hollister. I got off the phone with them last week, and they're committed to kind of expanding the program out beyond Hollister, but I know what they're doing. They're kind of testing the waters with Hollister to see, how well it works. And Hollister's a challenge, and they know that. So I think if we can demonstrate some success there, it'll open up some doors for additional pilots with this one client. But my goal, quite honestly, is when I look at Kelly's client portfolio and I look at these number of open orders, and that's just kind of a slice of it. My goal is really to get as wide and far in California as I possibly can. And it's with your help, everyone on this phone, wherever you might be in California within a jurisdiction, and again, that's where the one-to-one, jurisdiction for us, what market is that? What are the opportunities? Who are the clients? How can we make that connection? So for now, if there are questions, you just want to learn more, hey, Marvin, you know what, how can we work together? For now, this title program lead, that'll be me. I will, identify the opportunities, prospects, answer questions. Happy to get on the phone, individually, whatever you need. We can talk about descriptions, pay rates, adjudication requirements, all of that. That will be me for now. As I mentioned before, once we can get some maturity within the program, we can get some legs, kind of get things up and running. The goal is to do a handoff to, if there's brick and mortar, great, but at a minimum, handoff to whoever in market, right? Even if it's a centralized model, who that market owner is. And then same thing with new pilots or programs, or if you just want to reach out and say, hey, I think I have this and it might make sense for us to see where it goes. Again, that program lead will be me, and I will coordinate with all the internal Kelly resources accordingly.
Marvin, I didn't think about this earlier, but would it be helpful for folks to drop in the chat if they have it, or to give you a sense like the type of fields that they hear from the individuals on probation that we serve, or it could be for also, we serve young adults coming out of our juvenile facilities now, can be all the way up to age 25. The types of positions they're interested in, to see if that gives you some sense of, as you are looking at opportunities in California, would it be helpful if people just dropped in the chat, like these are the types of jobs that are more interest is expressed?
Absolutely. So I didn't want to ask directly, but you kind of teed it up for me. Any data that you have available that you want to forward on would be fantastic, because I can kind of take a look at just what you said. What is the expressed interest, right? Or hey, within my jurisdiction, I have 50 people in my talent pool right now. Most of them are looking for kind of IT and engineering, or their entry level. They may not have the experience, but that's what they're expressing interest in. Because I did forget to mention. So even though a large portion of this, like I said, sits in our manufacturing or professional industrial space, we have a pretty large global client that we just started to have some conversations with to introduce entry-level IT and partner with a Kelly33 program for their entry-level IT roles. So that's kind of opening some new doors for us. The client that I have in Hollister, I mistakenly identified them as professional industrial. I was informed by my Kelly colleagues they're actually scientific, right? So the role, even though I read the role as one thing, the role is actually a scientific role. So, we're starting to kind of slowly expand out from just the professional industrial space into more disciplines. So yeah, I think any type of information, data, or reporting that you are able and willing to share, send that over. And I am not the data expert by any means, but I do have one on the team, and he'll be able to make connections where I might not see them.
Yeah. I'm just typing something into the chat for everyone. The other question I had, well, two things. And you mentioned this at the very beginning, which I think was really important, and I know something that we had talked about prior. If a jurisdiction reaches out to you, wants to explore how to pilot this initiative and partner, but they specifically aren't looking to identify like temporary positions, which I think, I'll be honest, like when I hear Kelly, that's obviously what, you think about, when you're home for college or,
Yep.
but you mentioned that they can be specific to say, we want to solely explore opportunities with companies that have positions that would be temporary, but for permanent hire opportunities, that is a discussion and a criteria that can be explored or
Absolutely,
referenced.
absolutely. And I'll say this. I think while we're in the beginning stages and sorting it out, I will eliminate anything that's temp. So anything that has a finite start and end date, I wouldn't even put that into my search and my reporting for opportunities to connect talent with. I'll just look at purely contingent because again, I don't want to, I'd say if I were to guess percentages, it's in the high 80s are temp to perm or contingent, right? It's probably more than that, but I'm going to be conservative and say high 80s. So most of what we do is going to be temp to perm or what we call contingent. So just for the sake of making it clean, I won't even explore anything that's pure temp.
Okay. And then there is a question in the chat, because for this workshop, your audience is strictly the probation personnel. But someone had asked if they're able to reach out and put you in touch with or coordinate with their job training center
Absolutely.
in their county, and to explore it that way and connect you with them, if that would be appropriate.
That would be more than appropriate, and I would love to get on the phone. Like I said, ping me, hey, I will fill up my calendar with calls. I would love to explore this with the folks on this phone, on this call today, because for all intents and purposes, and I want to frame and parse my words very carefully, because I think it's important, and hopefully I communicated that today, that everyone understands, for us, again, this is not just a business play. Yes, that's part of it, right? But it's also a commitment from us, from our CEO and Chief Diversity Officer, so from the highest levels in the organization, with the backing of our board of directors, that this is good and important work to do. So whatever I need to do to commit myself to its success, if it means like I said, I got to fill up my calendar with calls with whoever wants to talk to me, I am here to do that.
Yeah. And I think you said, I can't remember, but this initiative, there's a few states where you're already underway. Are you able to share what states this program is currently working in?
Yeah, so right now, the one we're having, well, not the most success. I don't think that's a fair statement. The one we have the most traction in terms of activity is Iowa. It didn't start in Iowa, but they're the ones who kind of jumped out because we had a large manufacturing client there, and they were already kind of running a kind of Kelly33 program, but they weren't quite sure exactly how to set it up and all of that. So excuse me, we're in Iowa. Kentucky's another one where, again, we have a pretty large client there that has high talent demand, that we're seeing some success. And Tennessee, we started off last year with some really great potential, and it's kind of leveled off and got a little stagnant, but we're looking to re-engage with Tennessee as well. Obviously California, and then similarly Pennsylvania. We started off with some potential, and it's really all, in a lot of instances, is driven by demand, right? Because I want to make sure that I'm not going to, create a situation where now we have an influx of talent, but now we have no demand and nothing to connect them to, right? So right now, I would say Iowa and Kentucky are where we're having the most success, and it's really based on partnerships. And if I can really quickly, the state of Kentucky, they've invested quite a bit of resources in terms of getting justice involved folks re-entered into society and re-entered into workforce, right? So some of the barriers and the roadblocks that we're familiar with that happens when someone is getting ready to re-enter, whether it's ID and housing resources in some cases, and other types of resources. Kentucky invested quite a bit of resources there, and partnered with a number of nonprofits and different NGOs to help provide, or distribute or facilitate the distribution of those resources. So that one works very well. And then Iowa, I had the opportunity to work directly within their Department of Corrections, visited a number of their prisons, and just had some really great experiences in being able to partner with their workforce coordinators and you know and really they've been incredible in helping, you know, identify and kind of vet talent, right? Meaning, you know, I have a monthly call, and what I do is I'll kind of pull again an open order report. I'll kind of pull, you know, kind of, you know, target a prospect where we're trying to introduce a program, and you know we'll get on the phone and we have some conversations about, you know, what's the role, what's the expectation, pay rates, adjudication, and all of that, and they'll really kind of, you know, work within their talent pool to identify resources, and because one of the things that they said on as far as their commitment is, hey, we want these people to be successful as well, right? So we want to make sure that when we send someone to you, not just that they can and they're able to do, but they're ready to do the job, right? Because that's another piece of it. I think I mentioned we had some instances where things went sideways and we had high turnover at one site. And it really was one of the strangest things. As much as we tried, people just they I don't know if they weren't ready or what the issue was, and part of that was the client too, and we had to kind of partner with them and consult them on their environment and some of the operators, but it's the commitment to ensure that we're setting people up for success, I think, helps us in Iowa and Kentucky.
And thank you for that additional information. I know probably don't have all the information on the states at your fingertips, so appreciate all the detail that you were able to share there. And so Marvin does have his contact information on the screen, and we will share this PowerPoint out with everyone. And we did just get additional question that came in, so I will pause to take that. So the question is, how do probation officers connect their clients with the businesses you are partnered with? So you mentioned currently there's Hollister, and so what would be, if you could just touch base a little bit again on the next steps for those that are interested in reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the easiest way to do it is I have some Kelly colleagues that kind of own the client relationship and own the delivery, right? Meaning the recruiting piece of that Hollister area, right? So I would coordinate a call with the Kelly folks and this the individual. I can't see the screen, so I apologize. I'm still in presentation mode, but whoever asked the question, we can get on the phone and kind of figure out all the details. And you know, I not if it makes sense, I think it will make sense, right? Because if we can get talent into Hollister, now there's a couple of things there, but we would get on the phone and talk it through, and that's how we would engage initially. Like I said, you know, get Hollister up and running, get the other sites up and running. You don't even have to see and hear from me ever again unless there's an issue, right? You can work with the ops leads and the recruiting leads in that local jurisdiction, whether it's brick or mortar or centralized.
Yeah. And I think, Marvin, you can stop sharing your screen if you like.
Okay, cool.
And then just for the remaining time that we have for the Q&A. But certainly, as Marvin mentioned, and as I was saying, we'll send this PowerPoint out. His contact information will be there. I'm happy to, and Amy, to help facilitate any conversations if you happen to delete the email or lose that. Amy and I both have Marvin's contact info as well, so can help facilitate. But it sounds like the best next first step for anyone who post this informational workshop has a desire to just explore what might be possible within their jurisdiction would be just to reach out to you, send you an email, say, hey, can we jump on a call? And they can, whether they have one individual or 5 who have an interest in certain things. I don't know that you don't have a preference on the number. It's more
No,
about the just helping make the connections.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. That would be the best next step. Absolutely. Yep.
I think you answered all of my questions. I think one of the other things we had mentioned, I know I had referenced the work that we're doing with young people as well. Obviously, we serve all the way. There is no age cap on individuals that can be on probation. But do you or your business clients like partner or work at all with like trade associations or anything like that? There's a number of different groups that probation partners with, but just wondering if there's any connections to trade groups and so forth, or unions and
Yeah,
those
no,
types.
not that I'm aware of, and that's a question that came up on a different conversation I was having, and all of this is going to be non-unionized, right? So we try to kind of, you know, I won't say avoid, but for all intents and purposes, the work that Kelly does, even though we're in union shops sometimes, where this is concerned, we try to steer clear of that. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, because we don't have any trade groups or any particular groups that we're working with. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking because I know like there's certain skills that individuals are learning where it will be like welding or
I got you. Yep.
carpentry, where there's networks of additional support that can be provided. And so and that might be totally separate. And so it's just a thought that came to my mind as far as that goes. So
No, thanks for the clarification. Yes. So in Iowa, their DOC has those partnerships already set up. So I think there's some universities they work with, and there's one organization that provides them with training for their welders, right? Or just as involved individuals that express interest in welding. And a lot of their workforce programs within the prison system have some type of trade program that individuals can select. So we don't have those direct relationships, but as a byproduct of our relationship, we do. But the one thing I would say is the IT space that we're entering right now, we're starting to explore how do we get people new skills or upskilled to get those entry-level IT roles. So again, we're looking at our own kind of network, and we've had some conversations with some universities. We have a bunch of Google certifications that we have access to that we're thinking about how can we leverage those. And we have one function within our professional industrial business unit that charges clients a fee. So it's called our skilled professional services. And within that space, right? So there's assembly work, and then there's, kind of skilled assembly or skilled fabrication or skill, you know what I mean? So there's a premium that they charge clients for that. And we do some of our own training, but it's kind of small right now. And because we're asking clients to pay for it, it's not something that we can scale just yet.
thank you. That's helpful. And I appreciate your clarifying question because I probably didn't ask my question very good, or phrase it very well. There was one additional question I want to make sure that we get to that came through. Are there any automatic exclusions regarding probationers that would prevent them from participation in the program?
Automatic.
Or would that depend just on the nature of the position that a company is hiring for, and if there's any
So from
exclusions?
so from a Kelly33 perspective, that one's hard to answer in a definitive yes or no. So here's what I mean by that. Most clients that we're working with have, for loss of a better term, drawn the line at nonviolent felonies, right? So it's typically some type of drug or substance issue that landed the person into the justice system. So those circumstances are, I think, the only line that I've seen thus far. Now, there are others who have said, we'll sign a waiver, right? One, not others. That's a little generous. One has signed a waiver that said, you're our talent partner. We depend on you to be the subject matter expert in this area. We'll hold you harmless for any liability and any issues. You just bring us talent. So now it's on Kelly to make the decision, right? And we can kind of stretch that line beyond nonviolent, because what I've tried to explain to clients is when you say nonviolent or violent felony, these things happen on a spectrum, right? There's a wide range from one end to the next. So if we're looking at things on a case by case, job relatedness, circumstances of crime, what happened, and so forth, we just can't say violent or nonviolent. So for those, we try and really, really get as much information as we can and make the determination there when they sign a waiver. So I don't know if I answered the question. That's why I say it's a little bit challenging to answer, because there's not an automatic thing, especially from us, right? What we've instructed our operations folks who do the onboarding and do the screens and that there's no such thing as a blanket no. That should never happen. Everything should be looked at case by case, right? So there's no thing where we're looking at 10, different individuals for an opportunity and they all get flagged and nobody gets a job, right? That should never, ever happen when Kelly's doing the adjudication.
Thank you. That's helpful and a good question that came through. So I will pause in case there are any last minute questions that pop up. And while we're doing that, Marvin, I just want to thank you for making the time this afternoon to be with us and share information about the program, and certainly hope some point in the near future we can have you back and talk about where things have gone from today's days. So if anyone, again, is looking for Marvin's contact info, please feel free to reach out to myself or Amy and we can get you connected. And certainly, I know he had put up his contact info on the screen. So everyone, you may have written it down and can definitely reach out to him directly. And we will stay in touch, and definitely interested in any feedback that anyone has as far as moving this initiative forward, and any ideas on how to best do that. This is the first exploration of this, I think, from Kelly Services with California and with probation departments. So really looking to offer this, put the concept out there, and get an idea of interest, and we'll certainly go from there. So Marvin, do want to thank you for your time again, and we will send this information out and we'll stay in touch for sure.
Absolutely. And let me just say, I appreciate you both, Rosie, Amy, even from our initial conversation to this point. I appreciate the partnership, and yeah, really looking forward to making those connections, right? And wherever I can support, answer questions. The point you just raised is excellent. If there's things that we might be missing, right? Because there are aspects of this, even though we're a talent organization, we're not experts in the justice system and probation. So if there are things that we're missing that we should be thinking about, please feel free to share that feedback. We're really excited about the potential partnership. Thank you.
All right, so more to come. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Bye,
Have a great
everyone.
weekend, everyone.